What's up everyone, welcome back here at the Neon Pavilion. It's another video week, you know, once we get into this point where we're getting closer and closer to a Eurovision contest, that's usually when like news start going on. And then of course this year we have everything going on with the Eurovision in May next year because of the very special situation. So lots of news going on in the moment, but today we're going to be talking about the Junior Eurovision stage design because the stage was revealed earlier this week, and I thought, you know, I promised in my video when I talked about the design, the graphics and slogan of this year that I was going to be reacting to the stage as well. So I thought, you know what, let's get it over with. But before we get into that, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about stages in general, because I think personally, this is one of those things that I'm really interested in. I think people need to realize, and if you're new to this channel, hi, just letting you know, I think the production of Eurovision is way more exciting than the music and ranking your favorites and who goes on to win. I grew up in a family with a TV producer, so I think just the whole idea of television production is always something I've been excited about, and I've been interested in this world ever since I was a little kid. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that something like stage design, graphic design, all these things are things that I'm really passionate about and really interested in. And I definitely also have some strong opinions on this kind of stuff. And when it comes to the stages of the Junior Eurovision, honestly, I think there are some of the stages that I've actually preferred more than Eurovision's. And I think I'm not the only one who thinks that, because I've definitely seen it around the internet before. And I think especially for the more hardcore Junior Eurovision fans that actually follows every year and sees the stages every year, there's definitely been some years where it's been way more exciting than the adult one. I mean, I really love the stage from 2019, for example, in Gliwice. I think that was really cool and super creative and just had some really fun elements in it that we hadn't seen before, and the whole graphics and everything with it was very seamlessly integrated. It was really great. I also really love the stage in Tbilisi back in 2017. A little bit more of a smaller one, but I love the idea of the lights and actually like really just doing the stage to look exactly like the logo. I think that was a really interesting take on it. Of course, there's also the multi-stage back in 2014. That was really grand, and it was the first time we really saw a big fancy stage for the Junior Eurovision, so that was very cool. But I even love some of the older ones. I mean, Yerevan stage back in 2011, I think that was creative and really fun, and we'll probably get back to that in a second when we talk about the stage this year. There's just a lot more creativity, I feel like, when it comes to Junior Eurovision stages. I think that's it, that I feel like over the years, and it may be because it's not the same German designer doing it every year, right? But I just think that there's been a lot more creativity with the junior stages. There's been a lot of, you know, really trying to do more than just a big LED screen. So that's been really exciting. It's something I'm very excited to follow every year. And like I said, I did enjoy the stage last year when Armenia was host. But this year, Armenia is once again hosting the show. So let's talk about it. What do I think of the stage from 2022? I'm gonna put a picture on screen right now so you can see it. Remember, of course, this is a render, so it's going to look a little different in person. This is just a 3D rendering of how it's going to look like. So what do I think of it? Well, it's fine. That's it. That's the video. I don't know what more to tell you. No, but seriously, I am a little bit underwhelmed of the stage this year. I don't think it's as bad as last year, which I think was... I get why it was done like that last year, because it was a different kind of venue. It was an actual soundstage rather than... Not a soundstage, that's something completely different, I believe. It was a theater, more of a theater musical place than it was an arena. So I get why it was done like that, and obviously the ceiling was way lower than when you get into an arena, so it is what it is. I get why the stage was how it was last year, but I was expecting something differently, and I think especially like thinking back to 2011 and how much personality that one have, this one doesn't have a lot of personality in my opinion. My first thought when I saw it, and I feel like, because I've seen others say this on Twitter and on Reddit as well, my first thought was just, That's Eurovision 2011 in Düsseldorf. And I think the reason you say that and the reason you think that first is because like those like lines on the big stage, the big round empty stage, I want to say, in Düsseldorf, like when you look at how they're doing the lights around the round stage, like that just instantly takes you back to 2011, I feel like. Which is funny considering that was last time Armenia hosted Eurovision, Junior Eurovision. I just wonder that the designers making this, is that just the only Eurovision that they've ever seen? Because it really do seem like it draws some inspiration from how it looked back then. I do also just want to point this out because I got that wrong in the last video. Someone in the comments pointed out that it was not the Polish team doing the graphics for this year's Junior Eurovision. Like I kind of speculated in my video talking about the graphics and all. No, it is actually an Armenian company. Suk Independent Agency they're called, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and they are based in Yerevan, and they are the ones responsible for the logo and slogan and the whole visual identity this year, including, as far as I'm aware, at least as far as I could figure out when doing my research, they are also the ones behind this stage design. And you know, it does have some things that just seems very typical Eurovision. I mean, we have that big LED at the back, which is not something we always have in Junior Eurovision. Sometimes we do have smaller LEDs, and see, I don't know about this, so I shouldn't just say things without knowing anything, but it is possibly, maybe not the biggest, but definitely one of the biggest LED walls that we have had in Junior Eurovision ever, I believe. It also has this LED up at the top, which at least from some of the pictures that they have shown, it does look like it's an LED or a projection, whatever it may be. I don't know if that one can like move up and down like we've seen in some Eurovision in recent years, but I think it doesn't really matter. I think it's fine if it's just up there. It adds a little bit more of character, and it also most likely hides a light rig that's most likely up there. I like that it seems like the center round stage isn't too big, because when I first saw this, my first thought was, that looks very big. And you know, this is the Junior Eurovision, where certain delegations like to just send one kid and nothing else. No dancers, no props, no anything. And I always hate when they do two big stages in Junior Eurovision, because we get a lot of these one child performing, and children are not that big. So I think you get what I mean there. It's always a shame, I feel like, when the stage kind of eats up the participants and you almost feel like they look like tiny ants performing. I think for Junior Eurovision, actually, smaller stages do work better. But looking at this, I would suspect it's around the same size that the stage in Gliwice was. And yes, some participants did get a little lost on that stage, but I think it wasn't the worst we've had, so I'm alright with it. And you know, you can do a lot with good camera angles, and maybe that's just the thing that's been struggled with in some other years. Now, there are some few things, however, that I'm a little bit, I don't know how to say it, I'm a little bit puzzled by, I guess. First of all, it looks like there is a good amount of space in between the stage and where the audience is. That may be a decision made because that Junior Eurovision in general, unless it's in Poland, doesn't sell as many tickets as the Eurovision does. And, you know, really one of the things that springs to my mind is Bulgaria, Sofia, back in 2015. There was a lot of empty space, especially in the standing area, and you did notice that sometimes in some of the wider shots. So taking the capacity of the arena a little bit down, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea, but there are some things when it comes to that just, like, it's hard to see because this is renders. First of all, those lines that we're talking about that kind of like comes out from the stage, it's hard for me to tell if that's actually lights or if that's like light beams. So will it just be like a black floor and there are little lamps that shine lights, or is it actually like physical LED tubes on the floor? I feel like that's very, very difficult to tell from these renders, but I'm hoping that it's actual tubes, because I think if it is, then it's not gonna look that weird that there's such a big gap in between where the main stage is and where the audience is. It also seems like that there is this kind of like a catwalk, I guess you call it, that just goes all the way around, kind of like surrounding the audience. I don't know if anyone's actually going to really utilize that, because I feel like compared to other like smaller catwalks, this is very big, and I do wonder if this is one of those things where it's gonna be used for some of the intervals and maybe the opening, and that's kind of it. Like, just a little editor's note here while I'm actually sitting here and working on the video. The more I look at this, the more unsure I actually get that this is in fact a catwalk, because if you look at the other renders, I don't really see it. You don't notice it in any of the other renders. It's only really that like a big look of the whole arena where you see that. So I do wonder if it's not actually a catwalk, but rather just like neon light beams going around to kind of encapsulate the audience, which I think it looks strange. And if that is the case, I think it is a little strange, because there's just this huge blank space at the back of the arena, which I don't really get. Like, what's that there for? Why is it? Again, it could be to kind of like close in the capacity a little more, because they just don't expect to sell that many tickets. But it looks strange. I would like to actually get an answer to that. And we'll probably get it once the stage is actually being built. But for right now, I'm just wondering, like, what's that extra space used for? Because, like I'll get into in a second, you don't see the green room anywhere, which would make sense for that to be there, but I don't know. And another thing, because you look at those renders and you look at the empty space that's just kind of around where the catwalk is, where's the green room? I mean, maybe the green room is just in a different room. They can do that. They've done that before. We've had that both in Junior Eurovision and in Eurovision. It's only really in recent years that it's just become this trend where the green room has to be in the arena. So I really don't mind if it isn't in the arena. There's no problem in that. But I'm just wondering where it is, because it's not on any of the renders. Technically, we don't have a point of view from the stage looking out towards the audience. So in theory, the green room could be right at the back end of the arena. I haven't looked too much into where the doors and everything is in the arena, because that was just a little bit too nerdy and a little bit too in detail before making a video like this. But it's just something, the more I look at it, the more it bothers me that the green room isn't being mentioned and you cannot see it anywhere, because like that big blank space at the end there after the catwalk. And again, if this is LED tube lights, I think it's going to look great. But if it is just light beams that we're seeing that can be turned on and off, like that's just going to look very empty and very weird, that there's just this big place after the catwalk where there's no audience. Like, I don't know, it just kind of looks unfinished to me when I look at the pictures like that. And I do see that most of the renders done, it very much focuses on the stage, so maybe they haven't quite figured out yet how they wanted to do the green room. But I also feel like we've only just gotten the logo and slogan. We still have a long way to go before the show at the beginning of December. They didn't need to reveal the stage design until at least like the beginning of November or whatever. It just feels kind of rushed in a way that all of a sudden we're just getting all the news all at the same time. Like at this point, we're probably gonna get the presenters before we're even in November, or at least like in the middle of November or whatever, which I don't know if they really need to rush it that much. But it is fine. It's a little empty, and I do worry that it's gonna look very empty on camera and the arena is going to look more empty than it may actually be, because there is so much blank space. It's also very simple. Like, I know that the stage in Gliwice already kind of did the whole thing with like LED tubes. So actually to try to do something with the neon lights, which is such a big part of the stage this year, they couldn't really do that, because then it was just going to be the stage from Gliwice. But like at the same time, they have those like beautiful patterns that I talked about in my graphic design video, where I talked about how they have those beautiful patterns on the spinny top. I would have loved to see those being implemented somewhere in the stage design. We don't really have that anywhere. But it's fine. It's honestly not one of the worst. And it is, of course, always interesting to see a Junior Eurovision stage that could just as well have been a adult Eurovision stage, because I could absolutely see that. So it's definitely closing that gap between the adult contest and the junior contest. And also, and I've seen people talk about this as well, it's just incredible to see something so big and so grand in the same place as that small stage we had in 2011. While I think it was creative and fun the way the stage looked, yes, it was a little bit budget and it did look very small. And it kind of gave you the impression that the sports complex, which the Junior Eurovision was held in back then, which it will be held in again this year, it made that look like it was a fairly small arena. So when you look at these renders, you really think, wow, this place is a lot bigger than it looked back in 2011. I don't know if there's been any renovations or anything to make it a little bigger compared to back then. I don't think there is, so I think it's just a better utilization of the space this year. But all in all, it's like, it's a 6 out of 10. Like, it's good enough, and I think, like, especially for the delegations who rely very heavily on a good LED backdrop, like, this is the stage for you. Go nuts. But a 6 out of 10, I feel like it's fair. But those were my thoughts on the stage design. What do you think? Let me know down in the comments if you want to. And thank you so much for watching my little review here of the Junior Eurovision stage. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe and turn on notifications if you're new. And then I'll hopefully see you guys very soon.